Our speaker is Troy Jones from Baltimore, Maryland. Troy Jones is a business executive and co-founder of StatusPRO, a sports technology company and gaming company that is creating the first ever fully licensed NFL virtual reality game and the first NFL simulation game outside of Madden in 20 years. And I hear we get a sneak peek at that game, so I'm very excited to see that. Troy has secured strategic celebrity investors such as LeBron James, Drake, Naomi Osaka, Jimmy Iovine, Maverick Carter, and Lamar Jackson. He has also raised capital for sports venture teams and companies such as the 49ers Enterprises, Haslam Sports Group, Titletown Tech, Verizon Ventures, Meta, Sony, Graycroft, and more. So prior to Status Pro, Troy worked at Morgan Stanley, a National Football League Players Association, Mixed River, and was the VP of Strategy and Business Development at BikeCube Labs. As a student athlete, Troy Jones was an all-state quarterback in the state of Maryland. He went on to play quarterback at the University of Maryland in 2011 before transferring to Western Kentucky. He didn't wear red today, so we appreciate that. To continue his athletic and academic career, where he graduated with a major in sports management. So wherever Troy went, success followed due to his relentless work ethic. Before Troy comes up, please silence your cell phone, because I want to hear what Troy has to say. Troy.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. Can everyone hear me? First and foremost, we're good. Please don't get up and walk away. I know I went to Western and we're your rivals. I will say the years I was there, we won. So hopefully no one's holding any grudges for that. But first and foremost, thanks to the MTSU staff for having me today. It's a pleasure to be here. One thing that you're going to see throughout my entire talk is I'm big on two-way communication. So I'm going to ask you all to participate. I am going to come down, interact with the crowd. This is definitely going to be an interactive type of day. You're not just going to hear me up here talking, because I want you to get something out of it. I do want to talk about StatusPRO. It's a big part of who I am today, why I'm here, but my story before that and giving you all context is very, very important. So if we were to go over an agenda so you know what we're talking about, first we're going to talk about who you are. I want to know who's in the audience, what your passions are, what your interests are. So we're going to do a little exercise to have you interacting with each other so we can get into that a little bit. Then I'm going to share who I am and tell you a little bit about myself, tell you my story of how I got to where I am today. I feel like StatusPRO is a culmination of my life's experiences. So you having that background and that context is important. After that, we're going to get into the StatusPRO story and just talk about the company and how we got to this point. And after that, we're going to talk about securing the bag. You know, we obviously hear a lot about people fumbling the bag, which is why it's financial literacy week and talking about managing your money. But we first got to talk about how do you get there. So I want to touch on that and really dive deep into it. So I'm really excited. So the first thing we're going to talk about today, I know we're having issues with the slide, is my ask for you. So I would like you to find someone in a room that you don't know. And what I'm going to have you all do is obviously introduce yourself. But I'm going to give each person a minute to say three things. It could be a phrase, words that describe who you are, things that you would say you live by, right? There's a reason behind it, but I want you to be able to do that. And then I'm going to ask the other person to do the same. That your partner will get a minute to share their story as well. And then you're going to start some interaction, and I'm going to want to hear what you learned. What are some of the phrases or words that were said, just to kind of set the theme as we begin our talk today. I am going to be throwing random gifts out to the crowd for people who answer questions. Earlier today, I threw it and someone was caught off guard, and I don't want to hit anyone in the head. So I'm just going to make that clear. I used to be a quarterback. I think I still got it. So hopefully I don't jinx myself. But we can kick it off with that. So let's find somebody. Let's get up. Let's get active. Find someone you don't know. Introduce yourself and give them three words or phrases about yourself that you would say you live by or are important or unique to you. So we can get started with it. Let's get ready to wrap it up. We're excited to hear what we learned. Okay, to kick it off, I'm going to pick on my boy Zeke. He plays football for Middle Tennessee, and he was salty about me saying they lost to us when I played. So we're going to start with you. What did you learn today?
This is my guy Marcus right here. He's a commercial songwriter.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Awesome. So, by the way, if any of these shirts don't fit, you can see Ann at the end and she will get you the right size, just to be clear. So we'll get it started off with you. Anybody else? I will pick people out, so I don't want to have to do that, but volunteers, okay, we'll go. Awesome. That's important. That's important. We're going to get into that a little bit today. Oh, we got to throw it? Okay, we're going to see. I talked a lot of trash, so we got to see if I still got it. Oh, no, that was all. Anyone else? Anyone else? Okay, right here. Okay. Okay, so be bold, be passionate, and what is the third one? Loving. That's important. That's important. We also have a microphone, so Ann is going to help us out and passing that out. Can I get two more people, two more groups? All right, let's go over here. Let's take it to this side of the room. Okay. I like. What did he give you? Did he give you three things about 3 words or phrases at all, or you didn't get it there? No. Okay, that's fine. That's fine. One more. We have one right here. Okay. Can you say that again? I'm sorry. I lost. I didn't hear the first two. Yep. Nice. I like it. I like it. Let's do one more. We got time for one more. Right here. Oh, we can go right here. There we go. Awesome. Awesome. That's good to hear. I made fun of someone earlier who like whispered into the mic and everybody heard. But that's awesome. That's all great. That's all great. I appreciate you all sharing. I'm going to get into what my 3 things are, my principles that I live by. They tie into everything that I do today. It's kind of like my thing I come back to whenever I'm in any situation. But before I get into it, I want to give context as to who I am so it all makes sense and it all ties together today, right? So if we go to the next slide, who is Troy Jones? Obviously, I'm in front of you. You've heard about StatusPRO, a lot of the accolades, but I can tell you that it's truly a culmination of my life's experiences. And without that background, it'd be tough to really, probably honestly appreciate just the how I ended up in a position of founding a company in sports technology and gaming. If you would have told me 6 years, 10 years, 5 years ago that I'll be doing what I'm doing today, I probably would have told you there's no chance, right? I played Madden and NCAA growing up, but I wouldn't say I was a gamer. I was interested in technology and business, but I was 100%, focused on football. So it's a unique path to get to this position that I'm in. And I kind of picked these 3 chapters in my life because I truly believe that at an early age, you can really learn a lot about who you are and who you are at 30. I'm 30. Who you are at 30 years old has a lot to do with who you were at 10, 15, and at each phase of life. And it all ties for me. So chapter 1, my childhood. I'm from Baltimore, Maryland. I grew up to teenage parents. And obviously when you hear that, you hear about the stigma associated with that. It definitely was challenging. Times were always were not easy. And one thing I will say about my family, despite the circumstances, is my parents always did what they could to put us in the best position to be successful. They never quit. They wanted us to have the opportunities that they didn't. And as a result, I had to grow up probably sooner than what most people would, but I never saw people kind of fold in any pressure situation. So that was something that was instilled in me very early on. One story that I want to share with you all today is something from my childhood that my parents always, remind me of today when they just, see me on CBS News or hear about the different articles that comes out, is that this was something that isn't a surprise. Maybe what I'm doing is a surprise, but who I am has been the same since I was a kid. My parents, like I said, were big on trying to expose us to things and give us hope in any situation. So my mom would always drive around these random neighborhoods, upper middle class neighborhoods. We typically lived in apartments, shared rooms with my siblings, but we would drive around these neighborhoods and they would just show the possibilities, right? And I would, at a young age in elementary school, tell my mom, I'm going to can we go back to the previous slide? I'm going to get you this house one day. I'm going to make a lot of money so you don't have to worry about things. These were things that I knew from an early age I wanted to do. I wanted to make an impact. I wanted to make a difference. So then the question becomes, okay, you're a kid. How do you do that? From where I'm from, typically men that look like me, you see them achieve wealth through sports and entertainment, right? I could rap a little bit, but I wanted to, stick to something that I think I had a shot to actually do. So football was my way to potentially, again, try to get to the NFL, but then also pursue my education. So I was introduced to football through my dad at a young age, started playing football when I was 6. And the reason why that is important is because football plays a major role in just who I am today. And honestly, I pull from my experience as a quarterback almost just as much, if not more, than I pull from my experience in school. I've been to grad school, I had my MBA, been in college, went to a private school, but I can honestly say as a quarterback in football, it's played just as much as a role and helps me on the day-to-day as anything else. So again, growing up, playing football, obviously my dad told me if this is something you want to do, you got to give it your all. You got to put your time into it. It's going to take you literally sleeping, eating, breathing football to be the best, especially playing quarterback. And it was something that I was committed to. So things were going good. I was always one of the best athletes on the team, was able to get a scholarship to a private school in high school, which showed that I was trending in the right direction. I was good enough to go to a private school. Where I'm from, the private schools typically are better than the public schools, so I was trending in a good direction. Also was able to get an education that I wouldn't have received if I did not get a scholarship to that private school. So I was pressured and forced to kind of think outside the box a little bit, not just focus on football, but still, if you were to ask me on the side, I would say, yeah, I'm doing school because I have to ultimately get to college. Football is what my mindset is. I'm making it to the NFL. I'm the next, Michael Vick at the time, but Lamar Jackson, right? Like I wanted to just make an impact and be someone who could transcend the game. And I was on my way to doing that. I had a successful high school career, was an all-state quarterback, but recruiting wasn't going the way that I wanted it to go. I was fixated since I was a kid. Once I saw in my mind, once I said I wanted to achieve a goal, I had to go after it. And I wanted to go to the Alabamas, the Florida States, the top tier schools. So even though I had scholarships to 1AA schools and some smaller 1A schools, for me it was about going to what we call today the Power Five and being at the largest stage because that's what I wanted to pursue. So after high school, I decided to go to a prep school in pursuit of this opportunity, which went well. It landed in me getting an opportunity to go to the University of Maryland. But during that process, they had a coaching change. And if you know anything about football, for my people who are in sports here, when the coach changed, the quarterback is typically in flux because the quarterback is the most important position on the field, and they're the coach on the field, so that relationship is important. So new coach came in and said, hey, Troy, we like you. We think you have an opportunity here. So as I was saying, so I transitioned from prep school, went to the University of Maryland, went through a coaching change, and basically they told me that, hey, it's a new staff. We're limited on scholarships. So if you're going to come here, you have the opportunity to get a scholarship, but you're going to have to pay your way for the first year, prove that you belong, and figure it out. So for me, it was like, okay, well, I've always been someone to bet on myself. Like I said, from a young age, when I saw something, I wanted to go after it. So I chose to bet on myself, take out loans, pay for school the first year, and figure it out. When I got on campus, we had 7 quarterbacks on the depth chart. By the end of the spring, I had worked my way up to 3rd, so I was trending in the right direction. I made the travel squad my true freshman year, which is a big deal. That's the first step for all freshmen when you're coming in campus. And I was doing everything that I thought, would lead to me ultimately getting the scholarship because I couldn't afford to pay for my education. At the end of the season, we had a terrible year. We went like 2-10. It was a new coach. It was awful. And we fired the entire coordinator staff, so the offensive coordinator, defensive coordinator, and I was in the same position again to where it's like, hey, well, went to the head coach and said I did everything that we talked about. I need a scholarship. And he basically said, yeah, I understand that, but things come up and things have happened that were unforeseen, so it's not something that we could honor at the time. So at that point, I'm stuck and I'm thinking, okay, well, what's the next step? I can choose to continue to try to take out loans and figure out a way to pay for this when I know I couldn't, or I could look at alternative routes and figure out how do I get to the end goal, which is ultimately getting my college education paid for. And then that's when I decided to make the decision to transfer out and go to something called junior college, which you have to sit out a year. Anyone of you heard of Last Chance U on Netflix? It's for a lot of kids who are looking for that next opportunity to go to school, play their sports, and it's kind of like the last chance, right? So transferred, went to junior college, was able to take that opportunity and become one of the top junior college quarterbacks in the country, and achieve my goal and get scholarship offers from numerous schools. And obviously I chose the one that you all aren't happy about, but ended up at Western at the time to play for Coach Petrino. And I finally felt like my lifelong goal and everything I had worked for, it finally happened. I was in a position that I was supposed to be in. I was trending in the right direction. And again, the same thing with a coaching change. Coach Petrino took the position at Louisville, and I still went to Western on scholarship, but I was playing for a coach that I didn't originally want to play for. And while I played and had a successful college career, I was a backup to a quarterback that got drafted. It didn't go the way that I planned. And my senior year, I realized I'm not going to go to the NFL. And I really haven't spent a lot of time thinking about what I can do outside of playing football. I was a smart kid. I'm not going to sit here and say that I wasn't. And I had a work ethic. So I had two things going for me. But I literally didn't know where do I take this? What do I do? I never thought that it would get to this point. I worked my entire life since I was 5 years old to achieve this goal of playing in the NFL and taking care of my family and making a difference. And I tell people the next 2 years of my life upon graduating, being in grad school and trying to figure things out, I was fortunate to have a degree, but I still was stuck trying to find where do I take this now? It was a true identity crisis in a sense of there was no blueprint or pathway that I knew of or my parents knew of to help me transition from sports. So my first job was in a mall. I was selling emoji pillows. Then I decided that's what I'm gonna go to grad school. I was able to start my MBA online, and I was just trying to figure out what do I want to do in the space. And obviously I was bitter from football, so I didn't want to do anything with sports. And I said, okay, well, I'm gonna try to work in finance, right? That's what business people do. I'm in business school. Let me try to get a job. So through a temp agency, I was fortunate to get the opportunity to work at Morgan Stanley, which is one of the larger financial firms in the world. And it was a good opportunity to any and everyone you would talk to. The problem with that was, after 6 months of working that job, I still felt the same way I did when I didn't have a job. I didn't fulfill me. I didn't feel like this was my purpose. So I began to ask myself certain questions. And I was like, okay, well, I need to go back to my root and figure out what's next for Troy and really what can I do in this next chapter of life. I can't make excuses for myself and give up on all the goals that I had when I was a kid because things didn't go my way. I still have valuable experiences. I went to a great school in high school. I got a scholarship in college and played Division I football as a quarterback. Like there's have to be something here that I can do that still ties into what I wanted to do as a kid. And I came up with 3 terms that like I said, till this day, if we can go to the next slide, that I live by, that I always try to reflect on. The first was being self-aware. Self-awareness to me is important because I had to ask myself, okay, Troy, well, what do you like? What are your strengths? What are your weaknesses? What do you know? What are you good at? What makes you happy? And in doing that, you're accountable, right? Because you're able to analyze yourself and see, okay, well, I know I like sports. I know I like football, but I didn't do the best job of really trying to build relationships maybe in the business, while I was at school with the, people in the business school or anything like that. So, maybe I shouldn't start there. I probably got to go back to an old coach that I know or people that I know to look for help, to look for support. So self-awareness was number one. And from that point in time, I said, I always have to be self-aware and ask myself and just be honest with myself. The next thing was investment. When people hear investment, they think money, right? But for me, investment is twofold. Number one is, am I investing the time, the resources into whatever it is that I'm putting effort into? And am I investable? So as a business, obviously you need to bring in capital from investors, but being investable doesn't mean just someone giving you money. It could mean them putting their time into you. When I went to that private school, plenty of people's families picked me up, took me home, gave me rides to games, and supported me throughout that time. They were investing in me because they saw something. So that's something I feel like is very important. And the last one, obviously, is resilience. I mean, I think I heard it earlier. Things are going to come up in life. You got to keep going. People are going to believe in you sometimes, and people aren't going to believe in you, but you got to stay the course. And as I thought about those 3 things and I reflected, it's what led me to make the next decision that I made after I was at Morgan Stanley, which was to go back into sports. And in order to do that, I had to start from the bottom. So I had to leave a full-time job and take an internship opportunity that came up at the NFL Players Association. A lot of people, as you can imagine, were like, well, why would you leave a job that's paying you, good money for your age to go into an internship opportunity that's paying you hourly and taking a step back? But for me, it was about being self-aware. It was about, I need to do something that I love, right? Looking at it from an investment standpoint, it was about, I know I'm gonna put in the time and the effort to meet people and to learn as much as I can and become investable, so people see something in me where they want to keep me around. And then the third was the resilience piece, where I know no matter what comes up, I'm going to figure it out and make the most of the opportunity. So I left Morgan Stanley and took the opportunity at the NFL Players Association, which really allowed me to learn the business side of sports, identify where the opportunities were, and figure out, okay, you're still in sports, you're back in what you love, but now you're just in it in a different capacity than what you thought. And I worked at the PA, and it was amazing. My job was actually helping players transition from the game. So it was obviously the average NFL career is roughly 3 years. So there's a lot of guys that are 24 or 25 that maybe thought they would have these 10-year careers that now are no longer playing. And I just had went through it, right? So I'm thinking like, oh, this is perfect because I kind of found my way. I can give them advice. This should be fulfilling. And it was to a degree, right? After I got the experience and I built certain relationships, I knew there was something more that was in me. That same feeling that I had as a kid that felt like I could make an impact, make a difference, I still was feeling that. And I was like, there's so much more here. I just don't know what. And that's what led to me thinking, okay, well, what are the problems in this space? Where are the opportunities in this space? And I was introduced to someone who showed me what virtual reality was while I was working at the NFLPA. And I said, okay, this is interesting. And this could impact sports in some type of way. And when I think about the problems that I've seen, the problems we're trying to solve at the PA, this technology could potentially solve a major problem around player health and safety. So I ended up collaborating with the gentleman that showed me what virtual reality was, and using my resources from my job to build a product that allowed NFL players to simulate reps virtually, independent of being on the practice field. So if you know anything about football and you pay attention to the trends, over the years, players are spending less and less time on the field to protect their bodies and just preserve themselves for the game. So we built this product, took it to the Baltimore Ravens. They became our first client MVP customer. With that, I decided to transition out of the PA, and thus, StatusPRO was born. This is my co-founder, Andrew Hawkins. And when we first got the Ravens signed up, we thought everything was going to be off and running. We said, okay, we got an NFL team. We know this works because we were athletes. This is going to help everybody. But the problem with wanting to start a business is you got to make money, and teams didn't want to pay for it. So NFL teams are like, hey, well, we're the NFL. We'll use this, but we want it for free because this technology is new. We're already winning games. Why would we pay for it, right? So in my mind, I'm like, okay, well, I left a job. I came into this. It's not going the way I initially thought. What do we do? What do we do now, right? We're getting interest. We're getting teams. People are excited about what's coming, but we don't know. Like we can't sustain a business not having any capital. So that's when we looked at the space and we saw an opportunity to take the simulation that we built on the training side and create an experience that allowed fans to see what it's like to be in the shoes of their favorite player. So that's when we began focusing on an NFL game. And if you looked at VR, we looked at the industry. One of the main use cases for virtual reality was gaming. Gaming and fitness were the top two. So at that point, we had to make a major decision to get out of our own way. What our initial plan was to say, okay, well, maybe we should focus this a little bit more on the gaming side and look at that opportunity. Thus, we began raising capital from the likes of LeBron James, Drake, Mav, Naomi, alongside companies like Verizon, Meta, Sony, NFL team owners. And it was really around this impetus of changing the experience for the NFL fans and building something that they had never seen before. And after years of navigating rights conversations with EA, the NFL, we finally found ourselves in a position to create the first ever NFL fully licensed VR game, and the first game outside of Madden in 20 years. And I know you heard that earlier in the bio, but I want you all to really just think about never seeing something. Like I said, I'm 30, so in my childhood and growing up, I've never saw another football game outside of Madden and didn't even think that this was remotely possible. But we put in the time, we invested the time, we were self-aware enough to understand the space and the opportunity that we were in, to pursue an opportunity, and resilient enough to pursue an opportunity that was opened up because we were pushing forward and explored it and stayed open-minded. So we do have a relationship with EA. We are launching this game at some point that we will disclose over the next few weeks. And it's the first of its kind, and it's a true white space, and we have an opportunity to define a category that literally has never been built. So when you think about the sports metaverse, if you will, this is the beginning of it. And as we shared earlier, I'm going to show you all a sneak peek of it so you can actually visualize a sample of it. This is from late last year, but it's going to give you an idea of what the product looks like, so you can know what to expect to come. Leads me to, one of the last things I want to leave you all with. And like I said, I'm big on two-way communication, so I want to stop my rant and open it up so we can ask questions. But one thing, that I always tell people now when they ask me just about my career, how I got to this point, something that's important, is a saying around that says, find your passion, identify a problem, and solve it. I think for us at StatusPRO, that's how we got to this point. We started off looking at just an industry that we knew as athletes and wanting to solve a problem, identifying a problem in players getting reps, and it was something that everyone was trying to figure out, what is the solution? And then when we thought about, okay, how do we look at innovative technology to solve it, we had the experience, the knowledge, the network to really be able to execute that. And it's a process, and it's something that you got to evaluate yourself to figure out if you're ready for it when you identify the opportunity. And that's one of the last things that I wanted to ask you all was, how do you know when you're ready for an opportunity? For us, like I said, it came down to looking at our entire lives and saying, we've been prepared for this moment. I talked about how I was a quarterback and my goal was to be an NFL quarterback, but little did I know that whole process, everything I went through from when I was a kid to going to high school to going through my process of college, prepped me for being a CEO, prepped me to build the relationships that I have in this space, and ultimately led to something that is much bigger than what I thought I would do in sports. In some ways, if I became an NFL quarterback, I wouldn't be standing in front of you. I wouldn't have a chance to really submit myself and our company in history when it comes to people thinking about the way people consume sports. So that's just my story. It's what I wanted to share, what I'm really excited about, and honestly, what I think I'm really good at is just answering questions and sharing what I've learned and sharing that knowledge with you all, especially as you navigate, finishing college, graduating, and moving on to the next step. But before we get into that, I am curious to hear how you all feel, is the best way to figure out, okay, how do I know if I'm ready for an opportunity? So I'm gonna start it again with my guy in the front here who plays football, because I told him I was gonna pick on him. So what would you say your response to that is? I like that. It's important. Yeah. Someone over there? No? Oh, so we got two. Let's start. He got the mic, and then I'll come back. I like that too. Okay. All right, we got here, and then we're gonna come back. I like it. So back over here. We're efficient. We have two mics. We just had one, and we were throwing it everywhere earlier. So good job, Ann.
I'm still trying to answer that question myself, but I think I'm going to go with two of the principal positive sides, which is intelligence and prayer. Instead of intelligence, because you can outweigh if it's a good opportunity. So if it's an opportunity for you, outweigh the benefits and the opportunity. And then for prayer, you just pray on, in my opinion, if you are limited, I would pray on it just to see if it's for you.
We got one over here.
Sometimes I think that you're not 100% ready, and you have to trust yourself. And every now and then, there's no other way to go except for the direction that you're but some have them all the way to present itself, and I think that you have to just go for it.
Yeah.
Even if you think you can do it.
Definitely important. We have one here. So we'll do 3 more. So you have it first, so you can go.
Okay, I think, how do you know when you're ready for an opportunity? I think people get so stuck in themselves thinking, what's the right decision, what's the wrong decision? But in reality, you just need to make a decision and just take that step forward, because it's your choice at the end of the day what you want to do in your life. And I think you have to recognize how do I want to move forward and just make that decision and just go for it.
And then we're back here, and he had one, so we can get that to him, and we can wrap it.
I guess, well, going back to what two people just said, it depends sometimes on like the alternative. So like if the alternative is my life basically doesn't change, everything's normal, but there's this amazing unique opportunity in front of me, I might as well take it, and then if it flops, I'm back, where I was. So opportunity cost.
Yeah. And then wrap it up.
I would say, we call it no motivation destination, because the opportunity will be still, and once you see the door, it will be so nervous.
Yeah. I like that. I think there is no wrong answer for that. I heard a number of things that I think are very important. One is this feeling of you'll never feel ready, right? So I just think that's clear. I think Ann and I talked about that earlier. I think the question was around how did I know I was ready to pitch investors and tell other people my vision? It's like I didn't. It's never going to be as concise as you want it to be or as efficient as you want to be, or the product will never be as ready as you want it to be, but it's just one of those things where you learn as you go and you got to be confident in figuring it out. But what I always goes back to what I shared with you all earlier. So for me, what I do is evaluate my three terms. So again, in being self-aware, I ask myself, have I done everything I need to do to be ready for the opportunity? Do I know what I need to know about it? Have I put in the time? Did I seek out knowledge, right? Did I become an expert on any task, or am I close to even being an expert on whatever it is that I'm trying to do? And if sometimes that answer is yes, sometimes it's no, but if I'm aware of it, I'm conscious of it, and I'm not going to be blindsided, and I know what I need to work on, right? That also ties into the investment piece. Okay, am I investing my time into it, my resources in it, but am I investable? So people understand that, okay, there's this opportunity here, but this person probably needs a little bit of guidance. Like my investors know I'm considered a young founder, but they saw my work ethic, they know I'm gonna put in the work, so they're like, we're gonna give you this opportunity, know that you need guidance, so we'll give you the capital along with investing the resources to help support you as you figure it out. Because again, this for StatusPRO, it's a white space. It hasn't been done before. You can look at Madden, you can look at 2K, you can look at all the games, but VR is different. It's an emerging category. The experience is different. So it's something that I've definitely needed support and obviously have invested time in, but I'm also investable in. So that's an example of how I would evaluate that. And then the last piece, like I said, resilience, right? I've been told no thousands of times, I think, at this point. Rather it be from people I tried to get to join the company, rather it be from investors that I pitched to early on. And I could have easily packed it up and said, you know what, let me just go back and try to get a job at the NFL or go work for a team, which is a great job, but give up on what my vision and my passion was. But I believed in it. I was resilient. And in the midst of being resilient, I dove deeper into why people would tell me no, right? Because if I'm self-aware, I'm going to ask that question and figure out, okay, is there validity to what they're saying? Very early on, there was questions around the VR market and if there was enough headsets out there. And these are all very legitimate questions that I need to go and get answers to or need to gather information. So next time it comes up, I have an answer for it, right? So my question to how do you know if you're ready for an opportunity for me is, like I said, going back to my 3 principles, looking at a situation. And if I can say that I've somehow evaluated those 3 things with whatever the situation is, I feel confident about saying, let's move forward. And with that, I want to open it up to questions. I think I've covered a lot, everything from my experience as an athlete to growing up to, obviously being a CEO of a company. So any question that you have, please feel free to ask me. And I want to take a lot of time to do this because earlier we ran out of time, but want to give people the opportunity. So for the first question, the gentleman that I met that introduced me to virtual reality really just showed me the possibilities of the technology. And what they were looking for was the actual application. So typically what you get and just technology in general, you have these geniuses who are actually building it, right? And they understand it and they see it and they know the value it's going to bring. But then the actual application piece doesn't always go hand in hand, right? Like Mark Zuckerberg is a very rare person who kind of saw both. And even when he founded Facebook, he was in college, kind of in this social setting that he was trying to build for. So he was fortunate in that way. So I say all that to say, when the people brought me to technology, they knew it could help sports, but they never played sports themselves. They never were in the shoes of a player. So where I kind of came in was actually validating that, hey, this can help, and here's the use case. So that's really what I focused on. So then when it came to just actually learning about the tech, like I said, I'm a hard worker. I just fully engulfed myself in it. In football, I was someone who spent hours in the gym, hours in my playbook, hours watching film. It literally was just taking that discipline I built in doing that and then applying it to learning about gaming and virtual reality. Okay, who's the leaders in it? Who's investing in it? Who's having success? Who's not? What are the issues in it? Will they be solved? And it's just having conviction and taking the risk that if Meta, Sony, and all these billion-dollar companies are investing in it, I'm going to take the risk that it'll work. It may not work. The technology may never get better, but I'm just going to hedge my bet on that, and it worked out for me. And to your question around finance, it's not easy. I mean, we obviously have people who are way more smarter than me when it comes to numbers that help us build financial models that literally project out everything that we're doing, right? So when someone's giving you millions of dollars, it's not just like, oh, I like this idea, take it and then come back to me. It's like, I need to know where it's going, when, why, and you need to model out the return. So when you sell the game, what are your projections? How are you coming up with these projections? So it's a very detailed plan that honestly, once it's set and you follow it, that's what makes it easy, because you're either over budget or under budget, and that's pretty easy to follow. But it just was a very tedious process of getting into the weeds of what do we need, how much do we need, why do we need it, giving enough buffer room for things that are unexpected, and just following that plan. So really coming up with a plan and staying disciplined to it. So there was definitely a level of fear. But again, looking back to just who I was as a person, I was always super ambitious and always bet on myself in that way. So I was fortunate to never really, I did want people to validate, my idea and to feel like people would support what I was doing, but I just wanted a lot, to be honest with you, in life. Like I was never complacent. Even when things were going good, I was always trying to figure out how I could take the next step up. So this idea of finally getting a job at Morgan Stanley or even working at the PA and kind of, just staying there. If you knew me, you knew that at some point Troy's going to figure out the next move. So when people heard about it, they weren't surprised. And for me, it wasn't that difficult, because also I was kind of forced in that direction just based on what made the most sense for where I wanted to take my life at the time. As far as the support piece, I mean, definitely have support. I told this story earlier. Chad, who's here with us, his brother is one of my closest friends, plays in the NFL. He's one of my first investors. So when we first built the product, I took it to people who I know would understand the use case, and he was a childhood friend who believed in it and invested in it, right? So definitely had support in that way. My family supports everything that I do. I think this idea of virtual reality and gaming was like left field. They were like where did this come from? But ultimately it worked out. So once they knew I wanted to do it and they saw that I was happy, they just were, they were on board. The honest answer to that is, once you're told no enough times, you just learn to not care about it. To be honest, for me, it was something that I was very worried about and conscious about very early on in my life and just throughout my career. Even in football, I played best when I felt like my coach believed in me and he validated that, I was doing well, and almost to a fault, right? Because not everyone's coaching style is to praise their players at every time they do something that's good. So then when I transitioned, from football, again, pulling from that, I just learned that I got to stop trying to seek validation from people or in order for me to thrive in whatever situation, I got to get that from myself. And then when I got to my professional career, it was very disheartening when, you need to raise money for your business to keep the dream going, and people are telling you no constantly. You're naturally going to question, is this going to work? Can it work? But I think that's where the finding your passion, identifying a problem comes in, because if it's your passion and it's a problem that everyone has, you'll believe in your solution is something that can solve it. You'll believe in it. And eventually you'll just believe in it so much that you'll say, okay, that's fine. again, why are you saying no? You'll gather the information you need, and you'll just keep going. So it's definitely a step-by-step process. It's not something that happens overnight. I was fortunate that, like I said earlier, my football career kind of prepped me for where I'm at now. And it was a lesson that I learned from football that I was just able to carry into every aspect of life, but specifically what I'm doing with StatusPRO. It started off just knowing that even though I was going into a new industry, it was helping solve something that I cared a lot about, which was football in general, right? So since I was kind of merging those two, technology with sports, it was easy for me to learn technology because I saw that this is going to preserve the game that I love and make a difference for people who love sports the way that I do. So naturally, because of that connection, it was easy to just like do research on it because I was curious, because I became genuinely interested in saying, okay, well, why doesn't anyone else think this is going to be successful? Or, well, what have we seen thus far that we can learn from companies that might have been doing something similar? So being able to just connect the two probably carried my interest. And then I developed a passion for it, honestly, about technology and the process about it. People hear me talk when I'm in work mode, talking about all the tech, and they're like, you don't have a background in it? And I'm like, no, I just, studied it and spent a lot of time in it. So it really just comes down to connecting it to my passion and then developing a passion for that itself and believing in the tech that it's going to make a difference, right? Eventually, VR is going to be like cell phones where everyone has a headset, and it's going to be a huge part of your day and how you learn and how you do different things. And I believe in that. So it's like, what is my role in contributing to that, as well as impacting sports? And that's really what keeps me going in it. That question came up earlier. So it's definitely a process. This is where I haven't talked about this, but timing and entrepreneurship is very important. And you only get one shot with those type of people. So, it was first building the relationships, to your initial question. And, working at the NFL Players Association, I wasn't complacent that I just had a job. At every event, I was introducing myself, and was crazy enough to introduce myself to some very important people and just say, hey, I'm Troy, I'm intern at the NFLPA. And to be honest, some people it rubbed the wrong way, and they're like, who is this kid? And then other people were like, that's interesting. Not many people would literally go to the director of the PA, knock on my door on a random Tuesday and say, what's up, right? So I would say taking advantage of the environment I was in the NFLPA rubbed the majority of the people the wrong way, but rubbed the right people the right way. And once I kind of became a part of their network of people that they liked, or they looked at me as a mentee, that continued to grow, right? Because then that guy called someone who's at the NFL. It's like, oh, this Troy Jones kid, yeah, you should meet him. And then that led to me making connection there, and then so on and so forth. So once you start to build a reputation in the space, it actually is very small. And then you're able to kind of navigate that. Also, my co-founder has relationships. He's a former NFL player, and he approached it the same way. For him, it was a different story, but his older brothers played in the league. And when they finished playing, they were told they didn't have enough expertise to become a coach. So they had to start from the ground floor. He was like, I played 10 years in the league, picked off Peyton Manning, but you're telling me I can't coach and I got to go start at the entry level. So when Hawk recognized that, he's like, well, when I'm in the league, I'm going to make sure I'm introducing myself to people, I'm building relationships, I'm interning places. And his last year in Cleveland was when Braun was in Cleveland, and obviously Braun's Braun. So he was like, well, I got to figure out what Mav and those guys are doing on the business front. And he kind of worked it from that angle. So he was able to once he finished his last year in the league, he actually interned with Mav and LeBron and helped them build Uninterrupted, which is an inspiration to both him and I. And when we came together, we said, okay, we got this Rolodex of people who we ultimately will want to go back to. But again, and I trying to evaluate everything and being self-aware, are we ready for it? If we put this in front of LeBron James today, is he going to say yes? And it's like, probably not. So we put in the work and kept going till we got to a point where, honestly, by the time we approached these A-listers, the business was in a great position. We had the NFL license, we had the investment from Meta and Sony, we had Verizon. So it became hey, we're building something pretty cool. You want to be a part of it? And they were like, of course. Like, this is a slam dunk. So just even being strategic in when you get those relationships, right? So taking the time to build them and know when to ask for something really is, I think is the biggest takeaway, because I think every relationship is transactional, whether you recognize it or not. Even if someone's mentoring you, they probably do want the satisfaction of giving back and making a difference for someone. So before you go and ask for that job or ask for that opportunity, that's where you just gotta, evaluate, okay, am I ready for it? And if I'm not, what do I need to do to ultimately be prepared when that opportunity comes. Yeah, I struggle with that, honestly. Um, Founding a company is hard. And I would be lying to you all if I told you that there's much of a work-life balance. I mean, because you're trying to build something, it just takes so much of your time, especially when it's in this stage. Eventually, your time will free up, and you'll have opportunities to come and do stuff like this because you have a team and you have support. But even still, I showed in my email earlier, I had cleared it out, and then I got over 100 emails now because I've been here, right? So it's just people are always going to look at you for direction, and it's just what comes with the job. So I would say what I'm trying to do right now, and I'm still navigating it, is just having. It's like I'm very regimented, so I have a routine, right? So I'm up at 5, I'm in the gym at 6, and from 6 to 7:30, my phone is nowhere near me. I'm not thinking about work. I get my workout in, I come home, I eat breakfast, I read, and then I start the day. And then I also just implemented something to where Sundays I try not to touch work at all unless it's an emergency, right? So then that way I am taking the time out to check in on friends or just relax and just try not to engulf myself in it so much. But it is a tough thing to do. It's just like when it's your baby, like you're always thinking about it. But it's just something you got to be conscious of. And like I said, I think the regiment thing is what is helping me right now, trying to figure that out. But honestly, it's something that me and a lot of other founders are probably trying to make sure that we figure out, and we're doing a good job of. Number one is honesty. My mentors that I have, it's something about like football to where like coaches just say what they want to say to you and they're very direct. And I'm fortunate to have mentors that kind of come from this sports place with that mindset. So they're just honest with me. And I think sometimes it's harsh honesty and sometimes I don't like to hear it. And I'm thinking like, well, I've done a lot. Isn't there a lot to be happy about? But their job is not to praise me. It's to help me grow and be better. So I almost wouldn't want anybody to mentor me candidly if they're not going to be honest. That's the number one thing. And obviously, in being, them being honest, I have to be self-aware to accept that, right? And not let my feelings get in the way of receiving messages sometimes that I don't want to hear, right? That's just the reality. So the number one thing, hands down, is honesty, because you can't grow without it. The delivery is everything, but it still comes down to, are you being honest to help me learn, grow, and continue to improve? So it's twofold. From a business standpoint, I'll start off with the product. I hope that I'm speaking into existence. StatusPRO will have had defined the sports metaverse. So we'll be, when you think about the metaverse, when you think about AR, VR, the first company that you think about will be StatusPRO. And then there's the people side of that, in which I hope the business is a diverse business in an industry where it's not very diverse, to where there are a bunch of people who are passionate, who look at that as a place to come and grow and learn, right? Because I'm a firm believer in that you're not going to hire people that's going to stay with you 30 years, 40 years, probably like we've seen traditionally. But if I can give people an opportunity to learn, kind of like how I did, learn their passions, grow professionally, help us achieve our goal, and then they go off to do their own thing, like that would be amazing to me. If I have 10, 20, 30 Troy Joneses coming up and then coming back to me someday asking me for an investment because they have their own idea based on what they saw in StatusPRO, I would say we're doing what we're supposed to do. If I have a bunch of people that are just kind of staying in the company and complacent with that, honestly, I'd probably be a little disappointed, because that means that I don't think I'm doing a good job of grooming those people that are giving me their time and resources to help me achieve my dreams. So in 5 years, I'm an investor. I'm investing in people like myself, making a difference. And the company and brand is really the company in the sports VR space, but then also a place where people can come, grow, develop, and identify what their passions are in sports and gaming. I'm going to answer your second question first. I am a firm believer in that, number one. I truly believe that you are who you surround yourself around. And if I had to talk about the 5 people that I'm around the most, number one is my co-founder, I would say, for sure. And we're like-minded in a lot of ways, but he's older than me and he's seen a lot. So we are just constantly bouncing ideas off of each other. He's very candid and honest as well. So we're constantly just looking to make each other better. I tell people ask, like, you know, if you have a co-founder relationship, it's literally like a marriage, to where if it falls apart, the whole company will fall apart. And people ask me, like, well, how do you and Hawk coexist? And I say it's because we both know that all we care about is StatusPRO being successful. So there's no ego involved, right? Like, we don't think out of the lens of what Hawk wants or what Troy wants. It's about what's best for the business. And people with, to get to your question, people with that mindset are the people I try to surround myself with, right? Like, I don't really like people that are really into themselves. You know, it's just me personally, like, it's just something that I naturally, I'm always shied away from. So typically people I'm around, they think big, they're visionaries, they're always looking at big picture. And that helps me because in my position, I make decisions that I wouldn't probably personally agree with or would have been my first inkling every day. Even though the buck stops with me as the CEO, right? But I'm going to go talk to my head of technology, the developers, the engineering team, to figure out, okay, what is really best for everyone, and make the decision based off of that. So, and that's related to who I'm around. Because if I was around people who were, you know, a little bit more, call it self-absorbed, right, and who want to be in control of things, I probably would take that form and say, well, I think this, and this is what I'm doing. And I think any good founder, a good CEO is able to step outside of themselves and look at things from everyone's perspective. And I try to surround myself with people with that trait, right? But the other side of that, and I'll wrap this up, is, you know, those 5 people are different as well. Even though we have similar things foundationally, like, they offer different things to my life, depending on the situation. Some people I'm really close to, I have friends that just on a personal side that I grew up with, where it's just like, when I'm with them, it's not about Troy StatusPRO, it's just Troy, who I grew up with, who I know, who I can have fun with, who I can laugh. And they respect everything I accomplish, but they could care less. They're gonna crack jokes when they see me. They're gonna talk about me on CBS and saying, why were you smiling so much? And, like, you know, make fun of the situation. I just think that those roles in your life is important. And that's something I try to keep in mind too. So a lot of my friends that I'm close to have honestly different roles and different things that I might lean on them on, just depending on what the situation is. So thank you. I appreciate the time. Hope everyone got something out of it, and appreciate you having me. Oh, sorry. Yep.
Hello?
Yep.
Hey guys, thank you guys very much. Hope you guys learned as much as I did in that amazing hour. That was pretty
Thank
cool.
you.
I think the first thing I want to ask is, can I be one of the testers for that? Well, on behalf of Redstone Federal Credit Union and Middle Tennessee State University, I do want to thank you, Troy, for your time today and for sharing all the information with us. Thank you very much.
No problem. Thank you. Thanks for having me. Thank you. Appreciate it. Okay. Oh, thank you so much. Appreciate it. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you. Thanks, everyone.